Hello, good morning, and welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Daniel Olexa. I am the founder of Transcendent Living and the host of this show right here, Rise Up, where we're going to talk about how to rise above what is considered normal, how to live beyond what other people or maybe even your own beliefs are creating a sense of normal that might not be completely fulfilling your dreams and goals. Because dreams and goals, particularly dreams, might live outside of the comfort zone of normal as it begins to be imposed and learned on us. I find that applying to me in this moment for much of my practice since moving from a career in sales and marketing and advertising, coming into the serving industries that I have been in for nearly 10 years now, originally as a hypnotherapist, currently as more of a coach, but still practicing the process of hypnotherapy to help individuals unlock deeper potential within themselves and shifting their mindset. Um, I had to come to a hard awareness of myself that I have had a long term tendency to absolutely hate assessments because I feel like and have felt for a long time that they are merely a snapshot of an experience of the person in front of me, not a full experience of the individual. Much like a picture of a beautiful sunset is not the same as the experience of the sunset. It's great to share it that you can say, look, I saw this, or maybe connect to a memory that takes us back to that emotional moment. But the assessment's not the whole person. And what I've come to realize for myself is that that was my comfort zone of ignoring these tools. So in the past week, well, going back last year, I was trained and became certified in using DISC because I love DISC as a communication tool, bringing awareness to how we show up in communication with others in ways that we might not know, and how different communication styles might rub up against each other. Will initially, without knowing our style, think the person's just doing it to irritate us, when there's actually a space there of coming together in collaboration, that all styles have value. All styles, when we work together, can create a more collaborative outcome and maybe shift things in how we present for more efficiency and more effectiveness. In the past week, I embraced the LPI, the Leadership Practices Inventory, as I was exposed to it, recognized that what it provided that was different from all the other assessments was a 360 external mirror of the person in front of me, that we could really begin to understand how are they showing up in the world that might not be in their awareness. And then with that external mirror, how can we dive within the person to understand the beliefs, the values, the attitudes that are creating that outward behavior in how they interact with others. If you're not familiar with the LPI, it was created out of the idea of the five behaviors by James Kouzes and Barry Posner that are modeling the way, inspiring a shared vision, challenging the process, enabling others to act, and encouraging the heart. These are the five behaviors that they developed for leaders. And within the LPI, there are 6 questions under each of those. So it's a 30-question assessment that the individual, the client, would be taking and then sending out assessments to those that they work with, their manager, and other individuals who are their direct coworkers or direct reports or other individuals in their life, to get a more holistic sense of how they're showing up in the world across these 6 behaviors, 30 total questions. It is the most trusted assessment of its generation. It's been around for nearly 40 years and has a database of over 5 million delivered assessments, proving its efficiency and effect and efficacy in helping deliver a tool for change. As I said, the reason I chose it was to provide that lens to self. My work is very much about going inside to understand who we are here, our beliefs, our values, our attitudes that show up in our behaviors. There's a whole lot of discussion about changing outward behavior, but it's an external thing. It's an action that has to be delivered from an intention, a belief, or some other reason inside for it to happen. We can change behaviors, but if we don't change the drivers and focus there, it's really easy for us to fall back into the old behaviors because the thing that was actually creating it was never addressed. That's one of the reasons I love hypnotherapy so much, is that we can drop into the subconscious mind and what's percolating there that is below our conscious awareness that could be creating how we show up without thinking about it, when we just happen on reflex and we don't question ourselves in where we learned something, how we learned it, and why we're continuing to still behave in a way that is not helping us show up to create our intended desires, our happiness and our success in the world. So we think about this in a mirror of leadership, which is the title for this show today. Each of us every morning probably get up and look in a mirror and we see a representation of ourselves. That's not the only mirror we have in the world. We also have the mirror of the individuals in our family, the individuals at work, the individuals we meet randomly throughout the day. Any interaction with someone else provides a lens back on not only how we're behaving, but maybe who we are and how we have to believe we show up in that moment. When we begin to understand that more, we can come more consciously and intentionally into every interaction in the way we want to be seen and sensed and experienced. So, who we think we are, who we think we're allowed to be, both in our roles and the grand scheme of life, drives how we behave. Let's, let's just grab that for a moment. There's the person in front of me that is sitting in a role possibly of leadership. When they're in that role of leadership with a label of vice president or director or manager, what rules do they place on themselves because of the expectations either of the role or their implied expectations of who they think they should be within the role, that actually places them in a box where they're not being wholly themselves and maybe not being completely effective because these limiting beliefs of who I'm allowed to be constrict and confine their ability to be at full presence. When we have a clearer lens on that, particularly how others are experiencing us through that box, then we can begin to open that box and have more intentional choice of stepping out of it. Sometimes it serves to work within the rules and the parameters of that box. I'm not saying the box is bad. It's saying not knowing you're in it is potentially not helpful. So as we consider this lens and how the LPI can help deliver new aspects, new successes in leadership, how can it help? By delivering self awareness, which is what my work is all about, going in to achieve higher goals, identifying strengths and areas for growth. Where are the gaps between how we sense ourselves on the self assessment and how others are seeing us possibly showing up with more efficiency than what we see ourselves being? Or do we think we might be higher in how we're showing up and others are seeing us in a lower experience? So identifying those gaps, and then what's driving the gaps in what others are seeing that we're not, or what we're seeing that they're not. That's huge. We begin to bring the mirror together so it becomes less of a funhouse mirror reflection and more of an accurate reflection of who we are. And then, of course, it gets into goal setting and planning, because now we have a gap to set intentional action forward to close that gap with planning and development. It's going to enhance leadership effectiveness because now it moves from just do it the way I told you and I'm showing up how I think a leader should be, to actually coming into a collaborative experiences where things really get done. Because of that collaboration, it builds trust and credibility. Because there is a goal setting and development planning, now we have solid benchmarking and tracking. So corporations love assessments because corporations love data. This tool provides the data that comes from the deep dive showing up in the new way of being. And then it comes into full support of leadership development programs. How can we help a new leader to come into the role and be successful in how the organization wants them to show up and be efficient? Because that ultimately impacts the organization's bottom line. And this isn't just about corporate work. This could be any leader anywhere. a nonprofit, even leadership in family, in how we show up in the world outside of just a job. We're all leaders in some way or another. And those who aspire to show up with more passion, purpose, really living their why into the world is all about being that leader that we sense internally to then show up and be reflected accurately in the mirrors of those around us. To do that, as I said, I've said a few times here, and it's all about with the work I do, we have to look inside to see where those we are creating those gaps for ourselves, possibly without even knowing it. And that was a hard mirror for me to look in because as I said, I have tended not to like assessments because I sense they're a snapshot. And in realizing that, I realized I was actually experiencing a snapshot of myself by not embracing a tool that could be used to leverage a new level of awareness. With that, I've developed two new programs to help leaders become more efficient, effective, drive more success, and be happier in doing it. I've created a 6-month leadership incubator and a 12-month leadership accelerator that are available on my website, Transcendent Living, that I am called to deliver to the world to help leaders become more effective and efficient in their work. I would love to hear from all of you about what do you sense are your biggest challenges in leadership as we begin this journey together in making the world a better place and getting outside of what's acceptable as normal, coming into what's possible when we really live into our dreams and take a look at the limitations we're putting on ourselves. I look forward to chatting with you after the show and look forward to continuing the conversation on the next episode of Rise Up. See you soon. Have a great week.